Hello and welcome to part 3 of this video series on making a coffee table using Chinese interlocking joinery. This coffee table was made in part 1 and part 2 to this point without any glue or nails or screws holding it together. It's actually pretty strong. I can stand on it quite comfortably. It doesn't bend or do anything weird. So to finish this coffee table in this part, I just need to build this shelf that goes between the legs. So I've resorted to using the drill press and drilled holes in these 3 legs and this one too, and then square this one off with a chisel. So I matched this slope here to this slope of the leg, so that now if I place this in here, quite a bit of tapping maybe to get it all the way in. So I finished fitting these bars between the legs to take the shelf, and I am amazed by how robust this table now is. What with the double sliding dovetails down the corner of the legs here, plus the 2 pins that go into the tabletop, plus this bar going across here. These legs are now absolutely rock solid. Like I really can't move them in any direction. And still with no glue. So very impressive actually how well this interlocking Chinese joinery works. So right now I'm going down the line, positioning each of these lats where it needs to go, clamping it so that it won't move, getting them combination square, moving it hard up against this rail, and then marking the position of the shoulder with a striking knife. To cut one of these through mortise and tenon joints with a sword tip miter, you need to take the thickness of your wood and divide it into 4. So I'm going to do it in half first and then do half again to get 4 quarters. I'll need to mark up this piece of wood, which is the end of the shelf. I'll also need to mark up the shelf pieces themselves with the same settings, and I'm going to reference all my settings off the top of the shelf so that the top of the shelf is perfectly aligned. If the bottom of the shelf is not perfectly aligned, if there's a small gap here like there is right now, that's fine on underneath the shelf, but we want the top of the shelf to be perfectly flat. So I have this 3-ton sheet metal press, which I've had for many years actually. Comes in useful just occasionally, but for situations like this. So I'm going to take this piece of metal and I'm going to use this to cut it to the size I need. I'm just taking my sword tip, seems to be exactly 90 degrees. Okay, so I finished all the cutting. Now I just need to bend my template to 90 degrees. So with the spacers in, everything clamped down so that it can't move. This represents exactly where these lats need to go on this end frame. I'm going to take my template, which is exactly the same width as the wood, so it fits exactly into here. I'm going to hold that firmly like that, take my striking knife and mark the position of the spearhead. Okay, I'm going to do that in all 10 positions. Laying out of this joint has taken me about 3 hours, so it's quite a significant amount of the effort is just in doing the layout. I think spending time on the layout is worth it though. Well, that's 1 done. Only 9 more to go. Of course, I also have to flip this piece of wood over and do the same on the other side. This is the actual inside side. This is the side that will be visible to the table. This is the side that's really important to get right. So I finished cutting this one piece of wood. You can see the holes go all the way through, although I cut them from both sides. Before starting to cut out these holes, I need to sharpen my chisels again. sound of a sharp chisel. So I've finished cutting out the front face on this piece of wood. I haven't done the other piece of wood yet, and I need to now, cut out the back, cut out from the back coming forwards. So the reason that through mortise and tenons are really tricky is because you push the tenon through from the back, but then of course it comes out through the front, and at the front area it has to perfectly fit this hole. Even though you pushed it in from the back. Take my marking knife, put it hard up against the inside of this mortise, and then slide my combination square right up to it. And then, I'll take my marking knife and I'm going to make a small indentation right on the corner. When I round this corner over later, this indentation will get removed. So we push the square up to the end of the mortise on the front side, and then we flip it over, look on the back side, and yeah, that's exactly right. So I now have both of these pieces of wood with the mortises fully cut out. The mortises go all the way through, and they seem pretty clean. There's a line marked along here at 3mm. That's the depth of the sword tips, and of course there's got this triangular profile. Create a little groove here, maybe about a 1/16 of an inch away from my line. My line is here, and I found the best way to do that is to put the chisel, like a 1/16 of an inch away from the line. Let's say about here. Angle it at about 45 degrees, and then just give it a couple of decent taps, and then go at it from the opposite direction to make a kind of V. This is when I take out my router, and I'm going to route out that piece in the middle, and I'm going to have my router set to exactly the 3mm depth that I want for my sword tip. Okay, so now I need to get rid of this piece of wood, so I'm going to put my chisel, let's hold this a little better. I'll put my chisel here. Now I can go vertical at this point, just go straight down. Okay, and then I can use the fact that this is flat to go in this direction to take out that piece of wood. So I've been all around the edges now, and I've cut it right down to the line, and the final thing I just need to do is just get my chisel and just put it in the corner there, and just drag it like this, just to make sure that the corner's really sharp and clean in here, and there's no little bits of debris left. So I now have both of these pieces of wood cut, which will form the two ends of the shelf, with all of the through mortises with the sword tips cut out. So the next step is to move on to the actual shelf lats themselves, and cut the mating half of the joint into the two ends of the shelf. Mark this piece as the waist, and then what I'm going to do is take this over to the bandsaw, because the bandsaw is more accurate than my tenon sawing, and I'm going to saw along these lines inside the waist, leaving this piece as the tenon and this piece as the sword tip. Cutting it on the bandsaw, you need to clean out this waist in here, and this is actually narrower than any chisel that I own, so that was a bit of a problem for me. So I just found that by using the tenon saw, it's probably not an ideal use of a tenon saw, but I found that I could just use my saw to clear out the little bit of debris that's left at the bottom of this slot here. So that was actually quite easy, and it didn't take that long. It's nice and flat, if you can see, but it's kind of perfectly on the line. So I don't know, in future I might even consider doing my tenons with a chisel instead of using a tenon saw. So now what I need to do is put my ruler here into the spearhead. Sorry, it's a sword tip. I keep calling it a spearhead, I don't know why. And then this is where the sword tip needs to be. So after a fair bit more fiddling around, I did eventually manage to get this joint to go together. It's not absolutely perfect, but considering it's my very first attempt at making a through mortise and tenon with a sword tip mitre, which is a very complicated joint to make, I actually think it's not too bad. I finished the two outside lats of the shelf, and I thought before I put the other three through the middle, I'd just check that the whole table actually goes together. Quite a tense moment here, finally assembling these pieces. Yeah, some of these are maybe just a little tight still, you know. To have to use a pipe clamp to do the assembly is not ideal. Okay, that's all of the sword tips engaged. And you know what? I'm reasonably happy with it. Yeah, I mean, this is far from perfect, and there's definitely some gaps here at some of the shoulders. But on the whole, yeah, I would say that's a shelf. So this is what the finished shelf looks like. Some of the sword tips are slightly better than others. I think this one it turned out pretty nice. It's not perfect, but it's pretty tight. All of them are okay though. I mean, that one's a little bit worse, right? This one's not quite fitted. Maybe I could just squeeze it a bit more with the pipe clamp. But on the whole, yeah, it's turned out pretty good. So I'm looking forward to getting this joined onto the legs and put this whole table together. So that's it for this part 3 video. I think this was a good little tranche here. I've got the shelf built. I previously had the legs and the top built. All the pieces are actually now done. All the carpentry is finished. All I need to do now is just do the sanding and the finishing, the waxing, and maybe some rounding off. So I'll be doing that in part 4. I hope you'll join me for that and see what the final table will look like.